for all of you guys seeing it tonight.
Well, I watched it 3 weeks ago, but it wasn't quite finished. It was like 90% there. I had a chance to watch it in Barcelona, but I didn't watch all of it. So I was very surprised. It was like blown away. I was very happy with how it played out, and I'm like, I know what's going to happen, obviously.
Sidetrack on what happened. So.
Jann, I actually want to ask you a very serious question. If Hollywood came around and said, or you pitched Hollywood on this story, they would say, no, it's too unbelievable, this would never happen. What is it actually like, the last decade of your life, everything that's happened, having a movie based on your life? Just talk a little bit about it, and just, if you could share this whole journey.
I feel, really lucky. I'm 31, I've been raised for 12 years, and there's a biopic based on part of my life, so I feel extremely lucky with that, because most people that have biopics are usually passed on, or they're no longer around. So it's a chapter of my life that I feel very happy that it's out there. I'm continuing on racing. It's still very weird. I think it's going to continue to be very weird for a long time. I haven't yet processed what it's like, because this is forever. It's out there forever now. It's great.
Doug, talk a little bit about having Jann on set, because he was the stunt driver, and how that affected making the movie.
Oh, it was fantastic having him on set, because first of all, it was an extra pair of hands. He's a fantastic driver, and he fit right in. Stunt driving is a little bit different than race car driving, but Jann seemed to be a complete natural. But also to have him around and be able to talk to him about, how did this really happen? What did this feel like? For Archie to spend some time with him and, get a sense of what the experience was. And he was invaluable. We're lucky to be telling his story, but we were even luckier to have him around helping us make the movie.
Carter, talk a little bit about why Neil was the perfect person to direct this.
Neil was amazing. When we started looking for directors, Sony actually asked us, what do you think about Neil? And obviously, his movies have skewed in a different sort of tone and direction. But he had this obsession with the main car in the movie, and personally he had owned...
And cars in general.
Yeah, 3 of them, and was a big car guy, and told us on the first call, which I really responded to, said, I want to do something hopeful, and every time I try to write something, it's just this fucked up dark thing, and I've been looking for something hopeful, but I didn't know what it was, and this is it. And so I got really excited, because obviously I'm a huge fan, and the idea of him with his visuals doing a racing movie for us was just unbelievably exciting.
Assad, talk a little bit about, what was it about Jann's story that said, oh, we need to make this as a movie?
So it's when we look at Gran Turismo as a franchise, so PlayStation Productions, we look to try and take some of our biggest franchises and find really exciting, creative ways to adapt them to bigger audiences. And I think one thing that really attracts to us is we're always trying to find ways to reach broader audiences beyond gaming. And I think when we look at this film and the story of Jann, is it's such an inspirational story, and it's really for those people who have been told they're not good enough, or they don't belong, or they're not going to achieve it. I always say that everyone's got a Jann story. I have my own personal Jann story as well, and I think when we made this film, it was really for all those people who've been told, they can't achieve it, and just the way to say that you believe in yourself and you can do it. So it was something we had to do, and it was also a great way to showcase an incredible franchise by telling a true story of someone who played the game and he's so good at it, he could become professional race car driving. What better way to celebrate a fantastic game that Cars and team have created?
Neil, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your requirements for making the movie, in terms of, okay, you're in pre-production, you're talking to the studio. What did you say to them? Okay, these are the things that I need to make sure this movie is going to kick ass.
Lots of money. Mostly. I think this film is an example of where the filmmaker and the studio probably see the same movie, right? So it's like, do we both agree it's like a motorsports version of Rocky, or is it something that when you leave the theater, you'll feel sort of uplifted and there's an aspirational feeling to it? So because you're both in agreement like that, it becomes like you're kind of treating the studio like a partner, and then they're treating you like a partner. So I think really the only things the thing I was trying to be specific about, I think, was the kinds of cars that we were purchasing. I was hyper specific about. We kind of agreed about all of the emotional arcs to do with Jann. So it really just became about the technicalities. You know, I really pushed hard to shoot internationally so that the film had an international feel, and we went to all of those cities. And yeah, I mean, other than that, it was a really good experience for me, and I feel like the studio really backed the film, so I didn't have to fight. But this probably comes back to not writing the dark, fucked up stuff.
Well, I want to actually be specific, because one of the things is you shot practically, and you are in real locations with like the real, these are not fake costumes, these are the things that people were really wearing. Can you talk about that, sort of going for the authenticity in these moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the biggest thing that I was clear about up front. But again, it was like the studio was into this idea of it. Let's just shoot these cars for real and put the actors in the cars. And you know, hopefully watching the film, it feels very authentic, because there is almost no shot of the actors in the cars that is synthetic. In fact, there is no shot. But I also won't underplay how massive the VFX was. So there's a ton of VFX, but the actors in the cars was completely real, and that was like the plan from the beginning. So that became about, okay, how do you put them in the cars at that speed safely, engulf them in cameras, and then also for the non-active vehicles, like basically dive bomb them with FPV drones and try to get this very 21st century first-person POV drone photography to make it feel as dynamic as possible.
Well, that's actually the other thing. I do have other questions for everyone. I'm just going to do one more for Neil. I really think one of the reasons the film works so well is your choice of camera placement and the way you shot the film. And can you sort of talk about because this film uses drone shots, and you're using the new Sony Rialto camera. Talk a little bit about what that camera gave to you for the production in terms of, you know, the technical things that it can do that maybe another camera can't.
Well, you know, there's two components, I guess. The one component is the Rialto cameras that were in the cars with the actors. And like, just for the audience who doesn't know, the way that the actors were shot was, we took real race cars, we took all of the steering and accelerator and brake hydraulics and everything else, and ran them to a stunt driver on the roof, which means that you have the ability on the inside of the cabin to do whatever you want, right? So sometimes it's handheld photography, but a lot of the time we were bolting Rialto cameras in front of the actor in a way that the only way that you could really do that would be to blow the windshield out, right? To fit them into that space. So that was one way that it was filmed. But for the drone photography, we were kind of scaling up the drones a bit bigger than I would have liked, because if you look at like Red Bull, sort of X Games, Hoonigan, you know, FPV stuff, which was our reference more than movies, you want the most dynamic, crazy drones that you can use, and usually they're very small. So mounting a 6K camera on a drone, the drone scales up a little bit, so you lose a little bit of that like very high fidelity, you know, very nimble movement, but we still got good stuff. But I mean, all of that is, you know, ultimately it all rests on if we're not telling his story and this kind of surrogate father with Jack and Jaimin Hansu, who by the way I love in this movie as his dad, you know, like that emotional skeleton has to be in place for all of this other stuff to work. So hopefully it does work. We'll see what the audience says.
This is a question for everyone who wants to answer it. A lot of people in this room know how the sausage is made. They know every movie has challenges. What were some of the unique challenges that you guys had to overcome to bring Gran Turismo to life?
I mean, I can start with this one. You know, and you kind of addressed this earlier. We worked on this movie for over a decade. In fact, we started working on it before Jann was even in the Gran Turismo Academy. And to your point, whenever we developed the script, it was really tricky because it's like, this just seems so obvious, and you see it coming, and it's the kids going to the academy. And what we always needed was a real version of this story. Someone who had a really interesting background, somebody the audience could relate to, and somebody that you would really feel for. And we just never had it. And then about 6 years ago, we found Jann's story. And I think that's what really unlocked it, at least for us from a story side, because basically that version is the version in a lot of ways you see up there today. So for us, as people who developed the movie, the screenplay and everything, Jann's story was really what unlocked everything for us, because it had been a real struggle up until we found his story a real challenge to bring it to the screen.
It also makes it a super unique way to tell a video game story. You know, that the game is this element inside of the world that is a true biographical film. It's a very unique way to do a game film.
We had the usual production challenges. Just one example was we wanted to put some debris down on the racetrack, so we put some cork and some leaves down, and we started running those spaceship-looking race cars. And like the first lap, they're air cooled and as opposed to fan cooled, so they have to take air in to cool off the engine. And they sucked in a whole bunch of leaves, and they were shut down for 4 hours while we were trying to fix the engines and restart them. So it was that kind of stuff. You know, you just don't know that the leaves on the track is a bad idea.
Kaz, I have a question for you. When you first heard about GT Academy, were you immediately like, this is a brilliant idea? Or were you like, I'm a little nervous about this?
GT アカデミーの、プロジェクトが始まろうという瞬間は僕本当ワクワクしていて、というのもグランツーリスモを使って、本物のドライビングテクニックが学べるという確信はその何年も前から持ってたんですよね。ただ、それを実際に実現する機会がなかった。それが日産の力によって可能になったので、それは嬉しかったですよ。
Yeah, so when the GT Academy project started, I was very excited by it. Because I had the conviction and I knew that using Gran Turismo, people can learn real racing techniques. But there was just no opportunity until then to really prove that. But you know, Nissan really made that possible and provided that opportunity, and it was fantastic.
Jann, I'm curious. You have raced and tested many, many, many cars. If you could keep one car from everything you've raced and tested, which is the car that you're taking home and putting in your garage?
It's not in the movie because it happened later on in my career. So it was a 2018 Nissan GTR Super GT car, GT500, which is out in Japan.
Yeah, that's the Japanese one I was going to say, right?
Yeah.
It looks so cool, that car.
It's that car has, just for context, it looks like a GTR, but there's only one part which is in common of the road car, which is the rear lights. Everything else is just custom. It's beautiful, love it.
I don't even want to know what that costs. Talk a little bit about, one of the things about this is you're telling a real story, but you're also making a movie. So where did you feel like you could have a little bit of artistic license to embellish or change? And where did you feel like I cannot touch this part of the story?
Well, I mean, the stuff that obviously is very personal to Jann is the Nürburgring crash, and that felt like something that needed to just be as honest as possible and as close to reality as possible. So that was very, I think, very authentic. At least we tried. And you know, in general, I would say over the course of the movie, the kind of arc, the structure of it is pretty much accurate to your life. I mean, the police chase at the beginning is an embellishment, and there's a surprising amount of stuff in the movie that is real. So it feels like where liberties are taken is more in the way that scenes look or are constructed, because you're basically you're amalgamating or you're constricting time, and so you may combine things together. But theoretically, we tried to keep it as truthful as possible.
One of the things about filmmaking is I love talking about the editing process because that's where it all comes together. So talk a little bit about what you guys learned in the editing room from early friends and family screenings or test screenings that impacted the finished film.
Shorter is better?
Yeah, I think shorter is better is probably a good way to go with that. I mean,
The other thing was trying to get to the GT Academy piece quicker, because that was that's the piece where really things start to kick in and get really exciting. So I think that was the biggest learning I took from that.
yeah, but it's one of these classic situations where you have to set up everything. You've got to set up the character, and you've got to set up everything that, you know, his home life and his family, and I think you have to pull the audience through that in order for the rest of it to make sense. But GT Academy is definitely where the movie comes to life. So you need the bare minimum amount to get you there, but it's still quite a lot of of building of story and understanding where he comes from in order for that to work. So I think Assad is right. Like probably most of the stuff was to do with the first act.
That's my last question for you guys because we need to wrap. But for people in here who've seen the movie, but for everyone else, what are you all really most looking forward to audiences seeing, especially watching this on a big screen?
If I can go first on that. So it's probably the best racing sequences you'll ever see in any movie. And the huge credit goes to Neil in terms of the way he created a story with every race. Because I think the early worry is that you can have just too much racing. For those people who aren't into cars or racing, it could get a bit mundane, but what he's done is he cut it so well. He added this beautiful visual language to make it exciting and tell you the story. So not only that, so there's a narrative to every race, but also just the way it was shot. I mean, he shoot the shit out of it. It's so good. It's so dynamic. It puts you on the edge of your seat, and you have to see that on the big screen and with the audio. There's, as I said at the start, there's things I still hear even now in the races that I didn't hear it.
Thanks, Assad. I'll pay you later.
So definitely for me, that one.
For me, it's this idea of making a film that's a bit more aspirational, and that the story reminds me of movies that I would watch as a teenager, and it's a different kind of movie to the movies that affected me to want to get into filmmaking. But it's the kind of movie that left me feeling a sense of upliftment, and that's what I was drawn to. So like if I summarize what, in my own personal point of view, the film hopefully does, is that it leaves audiences with a feeling of dreams are possible through hardship, but you can get there if you try hard enough. And being part of this kind of sports drama like lineage is the thing that I think drew me into it. So that's what I hope audiences take away.
I hope audience take away from watching the movie is follow your dreams. Nobody else is going to believe in your dreams apart from you, so you have to protect them. And you can be anything in life, but you can't be everything. So for me that was racing cars, and I hope when people watch the movie they take a direction to follow their dreams.
Have you ever won a race in these shoes?
I almost want to start racing in these shoes because
You
they
have to
look
wear
they're
those shoes
fabulous. I can do heel and toe pretty good in these.
I agree. We just need as many hopeful movies as we can right now. I don't think you can have enough of them right now. And I think, again, to Jann's point, I think, a movie about chasing your dreams, I think anybody up here on the stage, in a way, went through some point in their life where, I know my parents thought I was crazy, living down here with no money, trying to produce movies, thought I would probably never make it in the back of their heads. But just about believing in yourself and believing in your dreams. And I think Jann's story, again, really applies to that, and you can relate to it. And I think that those are the kind of movies we need out there right now.
Agreed.
On that note, I was just going to say, if you enjoyed the movie, there's this thing called social media. Feel free to spread the word. And ladies and gentlemen, the brilliant people behind Gran Turismo.
Thanks, everyone.
There it is.